If you are interested in learning how to raise physically and mentally healthy children, then stick around. We are going to learn what the 5 key elements are that you need to know to provide a solid foundation for lasting health that can support your children throughout their lives. Welcome to C60 Health Connections, where we meet with leading experts in the health and wellness space. Dr. Brian Stenzler is with us today. He is the best-selling author of D.R.E.A.M Wellness, the 5 keys to raising kids for a lifetime of physical and mental health. Dr. Stenzler is the co-founder of D.R.E.A.M Wellness and has owned and operated numerous wellness centers in New York and California, where he has helped thousands of families achieve their wellness goals. He is a certified ULT facilitator and corporate consultant who provides wellness and lifestyle coaching and consulting for individuals, families, and businesses around the globe. He also has a passion for working with athletes and has spent many years providing chiropractic services at the US Open Golf Championships. Dr. Stenzler travels the world as a guest speaker at conferences and colleges and lectures at numerous businesses, schools, and civic organizations as a health and wellness expert. He's also been featured on television and radio shows around the world. My name is Jess McNaughton, and I'm the CEO at shopc60.com and C60 Purple Power. I'm a business executive with years of experience in corporate America, and for more than 20 years, I've been exploring various modalities in health, wellness, and spirituality. Now, before we get started, any statements, products, or topics discussed today have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Any products or topics discussed are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. So, Brian, so great to see you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jess. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, no, I literally have been waiting to talk to you, I think for like 9 or 10 months or something like that. Crazy. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I read your book and I love it. It's an easy, fun read, and it's a thick book, but it's you can digest it. And I like how the individual chapters are short and you can kind of digest them over time. So there's just so much great wisdom. And I would say a lot of this stuff it's common sense stuff. It's stuff that I think our grandmothers would probably instill in us and say, but for some reason over the last couple generations, we've just lost this information. So I kind of want to just start right at the top. Can you run us through what are the 5 keys, and then let's go into each one.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for those comments. And you're absolutely right. A lot of this is common sense. Yes, I'm a doctor. I've got a science background and things are backed up with research, but this is stuff that everybody should be doing. And I believe that we used to do. So kudos to you for recognizing that. And, this stuff is not rocket science to be able to grasp onto. So I appreciate that. So the 5 keys to a wellness lifestyle, which is the acronym for D.R.E.A.M, D.R.E.A.M, is diet, relaxation, exercise, being an adjustment, and mental wellness. So do you want me to delve into each one individually right now?
Yeah, let's just go into the first one, diet, because I mean, there's so many great things in category number 1 under diet. So let's just first talk about like food. Like what about food do we need to know, and what do we need to be focused on as it relates to raising healthy, mentally and physically healthy children?
Yeah. So first off, when we hear diet, people think of being on a diet. I am not a fan of being on a diet unless it's the type of lifestyle diet where, something that you can maintain for a lifetime. When I talk about diet, I'm talking about everything that goes into your body from the outside world to the inside world. So food is a part of it, a huge part of it. Everything you eat, drink, taste, touch, smell, feel, hear, all the movies you watch and all the people you spend time with is just as much part of your diet as the food you consume. So we think about, if anyone's old enough to remember the old computer term GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Well, if we put garbage into our bodies, we get garbage out. The food that you have, it goes into your body. It doesn't just come out when you go to the bathroom. It becomes you. It becomes your cells. It becomes your fingernails. It becomes your skin. It becomes your heart, your liver, your lungs, your kidneys. So if you put garbage into your body, you're just going to basically become garbage. You're going to become a trash can. And I mean that not only with the food you consume, but if you're around naysayers, if you're surrounding yourself by gossip, if you're around people that say you can't accomplish this, you can't do that, or you're watching negative stuff, especially before going to sleep at night. Those are the things that we have to be mindful of. And you could eat all the right foods, but still suffer from malnutrition as far as your diet goes in its wholeness. So it's very important to understand everything that goes into the body from the outside world to the inside world is considered part of your diet.
That makes a lot of sense. So talk to us a little bit about conscious consumption. What is conscious consumption?
Yeah. So conscious consumption is basically being aware of everything that enters your body. People talk about everything in moderation. Well, when you do everything in moderation, you end up mediocre. And I believe that once you lick the lollipop of mediocrity, you'll suck forever. So I believe in excessive goodness and maybe a little bit of bad stuff. And really being consciously in your consumption is when you're having bad stuff, there are ways of mitigating the badness. So for example, nobody loves s'mores at a campfire more than I do, or my 6-year-old son, right? So one of the things is the people that we spend time with, they know us. They know that we're not going to have regular s'mores at a campfire, no matter what, because we have deal breakers when it comes to certain things in our diet, right? We're not going to have high fructose corn syrup. That's out. We're not going to have artificial sugars. We're not going to have artificial colors, right? We're not going to have hydrogenated oils, and we're not going to have gossip. Those are the 5 deal breakers of diet in my family. So what's going to happen if we go to a campfire is we're going to either bring ourselves what we want, or because we associate mostly with people who understand us, even if they're not like us, they're going to have marshmallows there that are organic and made with real sugar, not corn syrup. They're going to have chocolate that is actually chocolate, not mocklet, if you remember that from the Friends episode, right? And they're going to have graham crackers that are not made with refined flours and sugars and all the other junk. They're going to actually be organic. So while even those s'mores are still going to be high in sugar and high in calories, it's a way of mitigating the bad stuff and still enjoy it because they taste the same, if not better, because they're actually real food. So that's an example of conscious consumption. And so that can lead into not only in your food, but the people you spend time with. And again, not being around those gossipers, right? So you think about, who do you have plans with? Who do you spend your time with? Obviously, people don't get to choose their family. Some people are more blessed to have healthy minded families than others, but I know people, they're just a wreck after Thanksgiving dinner. Like they need to go on a vacation just from being with their family. So you can only control that so much, but you can control your friends. Jim Rohn said that you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So why not spend time with people who are going to lift you up and help you be the person that you want to be, as opposed to the opposite?
You were just dropping such great nuggets of knowledge right now. I love it. All right, let's talk about purification and detoxification. Is it important for parents raising kids to think about a detox with their diet? And if so, what would that entail?
Yeah. So, detoxification, purification is important. Every adult should do purification at least once a year in some way, shape, or form. Not starvation diets, very, very healthy, methodical diets. I like 21 days because they really help create a new habit. So, a 3-day detox or purification is not really going to do a whole lot for you. So you want to be doing things that are going to change your habits. If you eat cleanly throughout the year, the purification program should be pretty easy for you. When it comes to children, there are certain ages where it's A, more necessary, and B, safer. So many purification programs are not suitable for young children. However, if the parent is conscious about what they're feeding their children and having in the house and what they're getting at birthday parties and everything, it may not be as important for them to do a detoxification as opposed to the kid who's having McDonald's every other day, right? So what's going on? How much garbage are they getting into their bodies? But, like when we do the purification program at our house, my wife and I like to do it together. We'll typically do it twice a year. My son right now is 6 years old. So during those 21 days that we do the purification, he's not going to take the supplements that we take with the purification program, but he'll eat pretty much the same way that we eat. which is pretty much the way that we eat most of the time anyway, but it's a little bit stricter. So for 21 days, we have none of the bad carbs, right? No sugars at all for 21 days, no meat for the first 10 days. So we eat even cleaner than we normally would. And my son does that as well. As the kids get a little bit older in their teen years, then they can start taking certain supplements. And that's why it's really important to talk with a healthcare provider about what type of purification program is appropriate for children and at what ages. And I loved your disclaimer. I've been doing a lot of podcasts, and this is one of the first ones that actually has a really good holistic disclaimer in the beginning, because I'm not going to give any advice here for a parent as to what purification program they should do and what supplements they should take, because everybody is different. But have a good healthcare provider, whether it's a chiropractor, a medical doctor who does like functional medicine, nutritionist, acupuncturist, naturopathic doctor, whatever it is that you have in your life, or if you don't have one, find one, because everyone should have one of those types of partners in their healthcare team to really and truly promote health, as opposed to most healthcare providers are really sick care providers. So really focus on the healthcare, and that's where purification, detoxification falls in. Did that answer your question, Jess?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great. Let's talk about inflammation and how important in diet is it to look for foods that are anti-inflammatory. And so before we go there though, can you just explain a little bit about inflammation and kind of what it does to the body and how we can support the body with an anti-inflammatory diet?
It's actually a really interesting thing when we talk about inflammation, because people look at inflammation as the enemy, and it does destroy a lot of people's lives. There's no doubt about it. But inflammation is the warning sign, and very often part of the healing process. When I was getting my master's degree in sports health science, I did a pre-thesis on why using ice may not always be the best course of action when you say sprain an ankle or something like that. And now for you listeners, I'm not saying don't use ice. I'm just talking about, I just created an argument as to the fact that our body has an innate intelligence to always want to bring the body back to homeostasis and to heal. So if you get inflammation because of a sprained ankle, for example, blood flow comes to the area. It heats up the area. It brings scar tissue and healing tissue to the area. So this way it can actually heal, because you need that blood flow, right? And the pain alerts you that something is going on, so you get off your ankle. So you're not going to be continuing to run on it or walk on it, right? But what do? We use ice right away to decrease the inflammation, or we take an anti-inflammatory medication over the counter or prescribed to reduce that inflammation artificially. And then the healing process doesn't do what it needs to do all the time. So we always have to be mindful that inflammation is not the enemy. It's why do we have the inflammation? Now, when we go to an inflammatory diet, if you're consuming food that either A, is just an inflammatory food for pretty much anyone, or B, your body doesn't resonate with it, you need to know it, right? So when people take anti-inflammatories because they're getting inflammation in the digestive system, that's a no-no, except to get you through a certain thing, but you've got to change your diet. So certain foods are going to trigger inflammation more than others. Like red meats, red wine and stuff. Those are the common ones. Gluten is very inflammatory. So that's why, you always hear about IBS and Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. There's so many different digestive issues that come from an inflammatory diet. But people don't realize that certain foods can be inflammatory for everybody, no matter what. And so just because you don't have the symptom doesn't mean it's not a problem for you. And so that's why we need to be mindful. When it gets bad enough, that's usually when they have the ulcerative colitis, or they have those major symptoms. And so we want to keep a diet very low in inflammation. And so I've got a great resource with my book that's a free bonus that any of the readers will get. And it's basically just breaks down the entire inflammatory diet. And I could even probably make that as a resource for any of your listeners here. I'm happy to create some type of a page or something like that for your people. But just a very simple few pages about what's in an inflammatory diet and how to avoid it.
Okay, great. And then you mentioned earlier when you were giving the s'mores example about, bad foods, bad fats, bad oils. Will you talk to us a little bit about inflammatory oils and kind of hidden ingredients in foods that are inflammatory for everybody?
Yeah. So that's beyond my level of expertise. to be totally honest with you. And that's why I trust people like you to kind of really school me. And I use the types of products that you would recommend because I know, we know that olive oil is obviously a very good oil, right? You got your coconut oils, your avocado oils. And so you want to avoid the canola oils and all that other stuff, the genetically modified. What's that?
The seed oils.
The seed oils, exactly. So we really want to avoid all of those. But again, you could speak much more proficiently on that, I'm sure, than I can. And I think I do address some of those oils in the handbook, in the guide that I have for the inflammatory diet. But if you really focus on the non-seed oils, you get those other rich ones, kind of like C60 has, you're going to be in a much better position.
I love that you talk about hydration in here too. Will you talk to us a little bit about the importance of that? Because I know, a lot of parents struggle getting their kids to drink water. They want juice. They want something that's fun. So talk to us a little bit about hydration and how you get your kids to drink agua.
Yeah. So when it comes to conscious consumption, one of the first things we have to understand is that kids love to play follow the leader. And so parents need to be the leader they want their kids to follow. My son is growing up watching me carry a water bottle everywhere I go. I go to the gym, I take him to Taekwondo. I always have a glass of water by me. It's by my bed. I'm always carrying water. You know what my son does? He's always got water with him too. And so, he carries a water bottle with him most places that he can. In fact, we were upset because in his kindergarten, he didn't have access to water as much as we would have liked. And he would come home with a full water bottle. And we're like, Zion, why aren't you drinking water? And he goes, well, we don't have it by us at school, in the classroom. It's over by our cubbies and everything. But we emailed the teacher right away. And we said, we really like to have Zion to have his water close to him so he can drink it whenever he wants. Now he comes home and his water bottle is almost empty. So, the hydration is extremely important because, every body function needs water, between the electrolysis of the body, the nerves firing, between, having muscle growth and just every single thing in our body needs water. Our bodies are more than 65 to 75% water, right? The planet is more than 65 to 75% water. So we need to keep that same ratio all the time. And one of the biggest struggles that I see with families these days is kids walking around with their juice boxes thinking that's where they're going to get their water from. But you know what? Their parents are just, if not more guilty, because they're thinking they're getting their water from their soda and from their coffee. And just because there's water in soda, coffee, and all these other beverages, that is not your source of water. You need to be drinking pure water on a regular basis. And I've got a chart in the book about how much water. You can always look it up online. It's easy. Every person is different. I don't believe that everybody is supposed to be drinking the same amount of water. Based on your age, based on your size, your body weight, your activity level, the climate where you live. You're in Colorado. You need more water, at that elevation than I would need in Florida. So you've got to take all those things into consideration. But the bottom line is people are not drinking enough water, and we need to start drinking more water as a whole.
Yep. What's your thought process on organic versus non-organic and non-MGO fruits and vegetables? Like, why is it important? And if you're having a hard time finding organic fruits and vegetables, which ones might be okay to eat if they're conventional?
Yeah, so great question. So I have a whole chapter on organic and non-organic, as you know, and GMO and non-GMO. And I talk about what that is. But basically, one of the things that we're fortunate about here in the United States of America, and I know that you have listeners from all over the world, so things are different in different parts of the world. But in the United States, anything that is organic is automatically non-genetically modified. That is not the case everywhere else. So you could have something that is organic and still genetically modified in other parts of the world. So you have to be mindful of that. But basically, organic, there's a lot that goes into it. But the big part is whether it's treated with pesticides, or not, or a natural pesticide type of thing like ladybugs or, other types of natural fertilizers. So that's really important. And then when you bring in the genetically modified, it's basically how different things are like hybrid and stuff. And it's a real technical thing that I don't want to spend the whole time here talking about, but it's basically like it sounds. It's genetically modified. It's Frankensteining your food. And it could affect, it's very inflammatory for a lot of people. It's a major inflammatory cause for many people is having genetically modified foods, but almost everything is genetically modified these days. So I recommend if you cannot have access to an organic fruit or vegetable, at least get non-GMO. But there are certain fruits and vegetables that I would never touch that are, even if they're genetically modified, I'm not going to have them if it's not organic, like the strawberries. A watermelon is not as big of a deal. Yes, it's a big deal if it's genetically modified, but at least if it's not, it's because it's got such a thick rind, the pesticides are not as likely to get into it. Banana's the same thing. And that's why there's like the dirty dozen that you see out there in terms of what fruits and vegetables you want to avoid. But like berries, we won't touch those in the house if they're not organic, even if they're non-GMO. But certain things we could get away with. I'll have a non-GMO watermelon, even if it's not organic, if I don't have access to the organic.
Okay, great. That makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about technology. What's your thought process around screen time? Because the way kids are growing up now is much different than when you and I were growing up. Like the internet wasn't around when we were kids, and we didn't have devices or tablets, and we weren't working on computers in schools. We had pencils and paper, and we had a rotary phone. So what's your thought around screen time? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? What are some of the risks of too much screen time for a children's mental, emotional, psychological development?
So there's a lot of risks that come with it. And again, I have a lot about this in the book, between mental cognition, behavioral issues. There's been tons of research on, showing about even like a kid having a TV in their room, and how they do in school versus not having a television in the room. So the amount of time that a person spends on TV, I can't really comment on it because the world is so different. Right now, people are Zooming in on school, so much of their homework is done on computers. So I would say recreationally, that kids really should only be on screen time, especially kids under 10, on the weekends, and maybe a half an hour at a time. That's all that we have our son on it, unless it's some extraordinarily rare situation. But what's happening is parents are making the screens the babysitters. And I understand parents are working from home more now than they used to, but that's not the only reason why parents are just giving their kids a device. They just want the kid to shut up and just do something else so the parent could do something. And I just want the parent to be mindful of that think of, and for someone that consumes a lot of sugar won't really grasp this analogy, but think of screens as sugar for the brain, right? And think about how your kid is after they get off their device. Do they behave as well as they could? Are they sleeping well at night, right? What is their behavior like in general? And what is it like when they get off of it? Are they more violent? Are they using more bad words? Are they getting along with others? Do they want to come to the dinner table and be a family, or they just want to look at their phones if they're old enough to have a phone, or get on their device and watch Ryan's World, and get on YouTube? So you've got to look at all of these different things. It's not a one size fits all. I would keep kids off screens, who are under 2, pretty much at all costs, with the exception of maybe FaceTime or something like that to see family, family and friends for like FaceTime type of stuff. Other than that, I wouldn't have them doing any screens. Maybe they could do an alphabet song or something like that here and there, but don't leave them on it for more than 10 minutes. It affects your visual acuity. There's so many things. And one of the biggest things that screens affect that nobody else talks about is posture. I see more adults, with their head forward and everything else, than I have. I've been in practice over 23 years. I don't practice now, but, I would see, parents with all the forward head posture. Now it's kids that have it. They're in the office. Like I had a pediatric and family wellness practice for 23 years. And the kids, they'd come and get adjusted, and then they would have their heads down like this on the phones, on the tablets. And I'm just like, no, you just are undoing everything that I did. And forward head posture, affects the immune system. It affects respiration, it affects cardiovascular health. It affects digestive health. So it doesn't only look bad and set you up to look like Quasimodo, right? If the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but it sets you up for ill health as well. And, the screens are multidimensional in terms of the dangers of them.
Okay. That makes sense. So we've covered a good portion of, some of the most important elements in key 1, which is diet. So key number 2, you said, is relaxation. So let's talk about some of that stuff. You mentioned in this section talking about the importance of sleep. Can you tell us a little bit more about why quality sleep is so important for children?
Yeah. So relaxation, I define as giving the body a chance to call time out, to repair, regenerate, and rejuvenate yourself. And the states of refreshing tranquility that you need in order to continue. So again, very similar to what we talked about with the screens: cognition, right? Memory, behavior, all of these different things play in when kids are not well rested. I mean, think about, any of you that are listening right now, when your kid has a bad night's sleep, think about how they are at school the next day, right? They're not all with it all the time. And sometimes they get behavioral issues, and they're not paying attention at school. They don't grasp all the information that they're learning. So a good night's sleep is extremely important. So you've got to set your child up for success for having a good night's sleep. And that's where putting the screens away hours before going to bed, not having any type of sugar before going to bed. How many parents are giving their kids apple juice with their dinner, and then they go to bed an hour later? So they're hopped up on sugar, right? Well, and parents do it too with the caffeine, right? And it's like, you wonder why no one's sleeping through the night. Or they're watching something on TV that stimulates the brain, which same thing that adults do, keeps them from sleeping. And so sleep is extremely important. Also, if the child is young, growth is a very important aspect of sleep. And you've got to get into deep sleep. So getting into your full, your REM sleep and everything else is extremely important.
I think that that's really important that you mentioned just kind of setting up, the appropriate environment to support healthy sleep. I think some families would think, hey, we're doing a good thing if we're playing, video games together before bed. And that's just activating the mind. And it's not creating an environment where that child can naturally transition into a restful sleep, because their different areas of their brain are getting activated.
Yeah. And just to add to that, if the child is old enough and they're on Facebook or Instagram or any of the social media sites, and they're using their phones when they're in bed with the lights out and everything, that phone is emitting, or TV, whatever they're watching, or tablet, is emitting a blue light. And we all hear about the blue light, but most people don't understand what the blue light is, right? The blue light is the same type of light that you get from the sun, right? And it tells your brain it's daytime. So if you're using a blue light at night, right, it inhibits the production of melatonin, which is the hormone you need to help fall asleep. So if your brain is fooled thinking that the sun is out and you're not able to go to sleep, you're not going to sleep. And if you fall asleep, you're probably not going to stay asleep. So please, parents, please get your kids off their devices. Don't even let them have their phones in their bedroom or tablets in the bedroom if they're not going to listen to you, because it's one of the killers. It's one of the things that keeps people up at night.
Thank you. In this chapter, you mentioned, or in this section of the book, you mention two things that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. One is appropriate alone time, and then also ample outlets for self-expression. So can you help us understand a little bit more about why alone time and the ability to express yourself appropriately is so important for kids?
Yeah. So it's funny, because one thing that every single baby needs coming into this world is attention, not alone time. They need the caressing of the parent, and they need to be around. It's something that's very unique with human beings. But as we start getting older, we begin to need time alone. We need space time to reflect, time to meditate, time to just play with our puzzles, whatever it is. And some people need it more than others. My wife does, you mentioned in my bio that I'm a certified ULT consultant, which is Ultimate Life Tool. And it's an advanced human assessment tool that basically helps understand what drives and motivates someone, how they learn and download information, how they perceive life, whether they have, how much energy they have, and so on and so forth. And one of the traits or talents that comes up for certain people is that they need much more alone time than others. And my wife is one of those people. And my two other previous relationships had that exact first talent or driver of needing alone time. And I thought that they were more antisocial. They didn't want to be around my family. They didn't want to be around me, or they didn't want to go to a party. What's the matter with them? And now I understand that some people just need to recharge alone. If they get too much time with lots and lots of activity, it's going to make them wilt. They're going to drain. So everybody needs a certain amount of alone time. Some need it more. And that's why I recommend that test, for anybody to take and find out if they're one of those people that need that. just to see how important alone time is for them. And children need it as well.
Is that something that we can link in our show notes?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you can take it dreamwellness.com/take the test, and you can put it in the show notes as well.
Perfect. We will do that. So talk to us a little bit about your thought process around outlets for self-expression. Why is that important?
Yeah. So, another thing that we have to go through life, so much being who we think we're supposed to be, right? Especially as an adult, but kids do it too, through peer pressure and everything else. But we have to do things to recharge ourselves. And what do we actually enjoy doing and performing, maybe, even if nobody else sees it? So like for me, it's music. I love just getting on my piano, and usually I'll do it when no one else is around, because either my son is going to want to jump on my lap and play with me, which is fun, but I don't actually get to play. It's not self-expression. Or my wife is on a call because we both work from home. So I need to play the piano when no one else is around. I need to create time for that. Right. Some people it's artwork. Some people it's doing a puzzle and getting that done, something beautiful, but just an opportunity for them to tap into what really makes them tick and do it on a regular basis, because we don't do it enough as human beings. We're so busy. We're in this rat race, the race of life and everything else, and we don't get times to really nurture ourselves.
That's great. So also in this section, you talk about meditating versus medicating, and you also talk about this under the diet section, where we've got to reduce our drug use, whether pushed or prescribed. So how do you get kids to meditate, and what would be like, what's so important about teaching kids the value of meditation as a way of self-soothing versus taking a pill because you have anxiety?
Great question. I love that. I'm getting some questions I haven't gotten on any of the other podcast interviews. I love this, Jess. So the idea is, and first off, when I say meditate, don't medicate, it doesn't mean never take a medication, but we over-medicate our society. The goal should be to try to resolve issues on our own. And believe it or not, a lot of health issues that people have, even in inflammation, is a result of the sympathetic nervous system being in fight or flight, right? So people have heard of fight or flight, which means if you're in a stressful situation, so say you're sitting somewhere, you hear a really loud crash, what's going to happen? Your heart's going to start beating quickly. Your lungs are going to be more shallow breathing, your pupils dilate. And that's a natural physiological reaction to respond to stress. And so we know that we have to fight an assailant, or flee the situation. That's what fight or flight is. That's the sympathetic nervous system. The opposite is the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. That's where healing takes place. That's where digestion takes place. That's where growth takes place. And so most people these days are in sympathetic dominance, or constant fight or flight. And this is one of the reasons why they have so much inflammation. So I know that you're definitely aware of a lot of people with inflammation, right? And so if they could just rebalance their sympathetic and parasympathetics, they won't need to take a lot of the medications that they're currently taking to basically treat the symptom, but they could kind of get to the cause. Obviously, the real cause is getting rid of that stressor, right? That's important to find out what's causing the stressor in the first place. But at the same time, we need to handle it properly. So when my son was in preschool, what they would teach in his school was a mindful moment, how to just basically go. And it was basically like sipping the hot chocolate. It'd be air hot chocolate. It'd be fake, where you just kind of take it and go, put it down, and just teach them to breathe and just get them to start taking deep breaths. And we do that when my son gets when he gets, out of control, starts having a tantrum and stuff like that. We say mindful moment. And just take a deep breath in and let it out. And what that does is it actually helps reset and get you out of sympathetic and into parasympathetic. And the idea of meditating in this situation is not about becoming this guru, doing yoga all the time, and you got to do a 30-minute meditation. Those things are great. But I'm talking about just being able to breathe properly and be able to get into that state of relaxation.
So in order to support that, you also talk a little bit about essential oils. How can essential oils help children kind of calm down, get centered, get grounded, and kind of lean into this mindful moment that you want to, inspire them or teach them to utilize when they feel upset?
Yeah. So first thing I'll do as a disclaimer is say that certain essential oils are not appropriate for kids at certain ages. So make sure if you do essential oils that you know exactly what you're doing and how to do it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I'm not an expert on essential oils, but what I know is that the fragrance and aroma of these essential oils and the qualities, the botanicals of them elicit certain parasympathetic responses. So like lavender, for example, that's one everybody knows is a great one. But people that can't sleep at night, for example, if you put a little bit of lavender on your pillow, on the pillowcase, and you just kind of breathe that in, as long as you don't have an allergy to it, that could help get you into parasympathetic and get you to sleep better. So it's the qualities of these oils that will do that. Now, you also have to understand that certain oils are going to stimulate you and possibly put you into sympathetic. So you've got to have somebody guiding you appropriately. Again, I'm not that guy. I don't know the essential oils in and out. I rely on experts for my people, but I do know that they make a huge difference. And I've got an essential oil blend over by my bed that especially when I have trouble relaxing or falling asleep at night, I put it on my wrists and I take a couple of big whiffs in. Got them from a massage therapist, hypnotherapist, friend of mine who does craniosacral work, and she just put together a great blend for me, and it works beautifully. Awesome. And I always recommend organic essential oils also. It's got to be clean. That goes into your skin. Your skin is the largest organ in the body. So just think of your skin as being like your heart or your liver. So you want to have good things go on your skin. So I always recommend highest quality, pure essential oils.
Okay. Let's move on to key number 3, exercise. Why is it so important for us to move every day?
Yeah. So, if you think about life, the cycle of life, what do you notice? What is it that all people at end of life, when they're older, have in common? Rigidity, right? They're not flexible, right? Flexibility is related, to, youth. A baby, can put their head behind their ears pretty easily, right? So flexibility is extremely important. And exercise is multifaceted. I mean, in terms of, for one, from the health standpoint of it, body fat in and of itself is dangerous because that, surrounds your organ and tissue. That creates more stress, right? Your cardiovascular health, it's important for your lungs and your heart to be able to do what they need to do. So you need to train that. And then there's a huge mental aspect about physical activity in terms of, the endorphins that you get just by doing the activity of exercising, but also when you look at yourself in the mirror, and I try to say this with all, respect of all body shapes and sizes and everything else, because, the most important thing is that people are happy when they look in the mirror. So it doesn't, from this standpoint, it doesn't matter what your shape and size is, as long as you can look in the mirror and say, I love you. And if you can't, because you don't like the way that you look in terms of physicality with your body, exercise is something that can help put you in the right position for most people. There are some physical limitations with some people. They can't exercise properly for whatever reason. I won't get into that. But we have to be very mindful of the fact of, from a superficial standpoint, we are visual creatures and we want to be able to like what we see. And the mirror is a good way of determining kind of what you, how you're doing. But I will say that there are a lot of really thin people that are extremely unhealthy. Like they have the internal adipose tissue, the fat tissue inside. So I won't use the term of what we call those people, but just because someone is thin or might have a good physique does not mean they don't need exercise. They just might have good genes and look the part, but the exercise is extremely important. So it goes beyond the look, the superficial look of what you see in the mirror, but that is another very important aspect of it. And I know for me, it was a huge confidence boost for me. I grew up, I was always the shortest kid. I was the skinniest kid. I'm still pretty much the shortest guy, just not kid anymore. But I started working out when I was 16 years old. And just the confidence that it gave me is just tremendous. And I know that exercise changed my life. So not just from the health aspect of it, which it's huge, that's the most important, but also from the psychological aspect.
That's great. So what kind of recommendations do you have for parents in terms of, how they could show up in order to help their children become interested in regular exercise and movement?
I think the biggest thing is to make it fun for kids. If you say, okay, it's time to go to the gym, let's go work out. A lot of kids are not going to go for that, right? Now, unless it's part of your family culture. Like, remember I said, kids like to play follow the leader, right? And so during the pandemic, when I was working out at home, my son would watch me lifting weights in the bedroom. And I would do push-ups, and he would do push-ups with me. He didn't really know how to do push-ups. They were little modified baby push-ups, but he did what he can do. And he would do the sit-ups, and it was part of the culture of our home. But there are so many tools out there in terms of getting outside and getting on a bicycle and going for a family jog or a hike. If you live in Colorado and you don't have that weather all year round, there is technology, and I recommend this more on a TV set, not on a tablet. I always recommend, if you had to choose between a tablet, phone, or a TV, choose the TV. But there are things like cosmic yoga. There are all these things where kids are like ducking and running and what was it, the haunted Halloween thing that my kid loves. And so he's like running and chasing the ghosts, and he has to duck and do all these things. He's doing exercise. And so it's the coolest thing, being able to watch him do physical activity, and he doesn't even know that he's doing something that's good for him. So again, it's all about either tricking them, or you make it part of your culture, or both.
Or make it fun.
Yeah, make it fun. That's the key.
Awesome. Let's talk about adjustment. I don't know. I think in your community, parents that are coming to you and that you've worked with in the past obviously understand the benefits of chiropractic care, but I don't know if it's necessarily a mainstream concept. I think I was first introduced to chiropractic care after a car accident. This was in my 20s, and then I started going to the chiropractor. But let's help us understand, number one, the benefits of chiropractic care, but how it can be supportive when you're younger, before you ever get into a car accident, or you need some sort of, intervention because of some physical trauma you've endured.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you asked this question, because a lot of times I go through an entire hour podcast interview and they never ask anything about this. And this is probably the main reason why I wrote the book, because people can write books about diet, relaxation, exercise, and mental wellness, but they never talk about the nervous system's role in your overall health and well-being in order for all those other things to work. It's not that it's the most important. They're all equally important. I always say that the 5 keys to the wellness lifestyle are like the 5 wheels of a car, right? You got 2 tires in the front, 2 tires in the back, and then your steering wheel. So the nervous system is basically your steering wheel. It directs all the others, but you're still not going to be able to drive your car. We got a flat tire last week. I couldn't go anywhere without a tire. So you need all 5. But the being an adjustment part is the part that is the most misunderstood and not even talked about. Because whenever I do lectures and workshops, I always ask, what does a wellness lifestyle entail? And they never talk about the nervous system. So being an adjustment is basically having your brain body in optimum communication with each other. So we live our lives through our nervous system, right? Every organ, every muscle, every gland, every tissue, every cell in the body knows exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, because the brain tells it so, right? And so if we endure a chemical, physical, or emotional stressor, right? So chemical stressors could be pollution that we breathe in, drugs that we take, push to prescribe, foods that we might have an allergy to, anything like that. Emotional stressors could be, school stuff, work stuff, health stuff, right? Anything that stresses you out emotionally. And then you've got your physical stressors, which could be being on your devices like that, or an accident, a fall, any number of chemical, physical, emotional stresses we have. Bones in the spine can misalign and cause an irritation or miscommunication between the brain and the body through the nervous system. And so what a chiropractor does is they analyze the communication between the brain and the body and make sure that the nervous system is able to do what it needs to do. So for example, if the brain wants the heart to beat, the brain needs to send an electrical message down the spinal cord, out the nerve to the heart, and tell it to beat. Right? Now, we all know, anyone that's a scientist knows that, yes, the heart has AV nodes, SA nodes, and all that other stuff. I'm just doing this for simplicity's sakes, okay? So for you medical doctors and scientists out there, I know how the heart works. It could work without the brain for a while, but ultimately it needs the brain. You cut the nerves going to the heart's eventually going to stop beating, right? Now, if you were to choke up and stress on those nerves going to the heart won't function the way that it should, which obviously it would affect somebody's health. So whether those nerves are going to the heart, the lungs, the kidney, the digestive system, the immune system, the reproductive system, doesn't matter. Anywhere the nervous system is not functioning as well as it could, the body doesn't work the way that it should, and now experiences dis-ease, and dis-ease over time could lead to disease. So this is why I recommend that every person on the planet gets their nervous system checked by a chiropractor to make sure that everything is in proper alignment to ensure the communication is optimized. And so when I used to tell people when I was in practice that I was a pediatric chiropractor, they'd be like, how old are your patients? I like, well, some of them are minutes old. I'll go to a home birth, for example, or I'll go to the hospital when the baby is a day or two old. Like, what kind of back pain or neck pain would a baby have? I go, let me tell you something. Fewer than 5% of the nerves in the body give information about pain, right? The nervous system is it's so big. I think it's maybe it's 25, it's 25 to 35% of nerves in the body are sensory, but only 5% of those nerves have receptors on them called nociceptors, which means they respond to pain or noxious stimuli. So more than 95% of your human experience has nothing to do with how you feel in terms of pain. So yes, if you get into a car accident, you need to go to a chiropractor and make sure everything's in alignment. But pre-car accident, you want to make sure that everything is functioning optimally. And if you're relying on pain to determine whether or not everything's in alignment, you're in glutton for punishment. You're going to be missing out because the pain is just the tip of the iceberg. Much like when we said inflammation earlier, right, is just a sign of something going on. The pain is usually just the symptom that is exacerbated. That is, of course, unless it's direct trauma, and then you have pain as a result of that. So, I've adjusted, babies from seconds old. I adjusted my son. We did a home birth. I adjusted him as I was catching him. And good thing that his dad's a chiropractor because the cord was wrapped around his neck 3 times. And he was kind of limp. And as soon as we adjusted him, bam, he came to life, breathing normally. Everything was great. Got his high APGAR score and everything was great.
Wow.
But how many kids are born, come into this world and don't have that opportunity to be checked by a chiropractor immediately?
Right. You've given me something to think about that I've never thought about before. And that's just even the process of the journey that the baby goes through, through the birth canal, and how that could be impacting them and the stressors associated with that. And then also I'm thinking about, children as they grow, when they go through a growth spurt, and their bones are changing at a rapid pace, and their feet are growing, and their shoes might not be fitting appropriately, and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm thinking about, they're going to school, and they're sitting in an uncomfortable chair, and they've got a heavy book bag. So what, in addition to chiropractic care, what are some other things that parents should be thinking about in terms of just to support the physical structure for their children?
Yeah, all the things you just said. Proper footwear. I'm living in Florida right now. People are in flip-flops all the time. That's not supportive for most kids, right? That's not a good thing. The mattress that they sleep on. Obviously, for kids, it's not as big of a deal because they don't weigh as much. But they still need to have a good mattress, and when it's age appropriate, having a pillow that's good for their neck and doesn't have their neck propped up or doesn't have it too far extended. And if they sleep on their side, they don't want their neck wrenched. Basically, if you're like this, when you're on your side, you want everything to still be a straight line. So that's super important. When they are at their desks, especially at home, if they're on a computer, you got to make sure that they have a good ergonomic setup, that their arms, their forearm is parallel to the ground, that their knee is at a right angle. And I have all these images in the book as well, that their head is straight, their eyes are looking straight over or slightly up, not down. When they're using their phones, that they're not like this, that they're right. So the posture is very important. There are a lot of different things that we do to maintain proper adjustment, to make sure that we're in adjustment all the time. So whereas chiropractic helps get people into adjustment, like you just talked about, Jess, the idea would be to stay in adjustment. And those are many of the physical things that help avoid those physical stressors that we talked about. And backpacks are one of the most damaging things to kids' spines. And I've got a whole chart in there about how heavy a backpack should be based on a kid's weight, and how to pack it properly, with the heaviest books close to the spine versus all the way in the back, because that's going to weigh the kids backward. But the first thing to look at is, does your kid look like they're leaning forward or leaning back when they're in the backpack? How far does the backpack sag down? Is it properly fitted for that child?
Okay. I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about what is the nervous system's role in immune function and also longevity?
Yeah. So the nervous system, like I said before, controls everything, right? And that includes the immune system. So the way our immune system simply works is offense and defense, right? So, and I was just on national news a month ago, in the beginning of the year, a couple months ago, and I talked about this on national news because people don't talk about this. So it's like the X's and O's that with the pandemic, everything has been about defense and nothing about offense. Everything's been about, wearing masks, get your shots, avoid people, stay away from everybody and everything else. Those are all defensive measures to help you from getting the virus. But what if you have the virus? It's like, because people are going to get it. So you need to be on offense as well. And you need to build immune health and build strength, because we all know that for a sports team, almost every single sport that I could think of, the way the team wins is the offense has to score more points than the defense gives up. It's that simple. And so if you don't have more points on the board, you're going to lose. So we need to constantly be thinking about that. So everything that we talked about earlier about avoiding chemical, physical, and emotional stressors or neutralizing them is extremely important. But it's our nervous system that feeds the immune system with the vital information. It's electrical energy that feeds these white blood cells, that are your fighters, your defenders. So if you think about it as like, if you think about a war, you got to have a command post, telling the soldiers what to do, right? And so think of that command as the brain, and it's got to send those messages to the soldiers and say, okay, go in, infiltrate, shoot here, do this. That's your intel, right? And without having your intel, you're not going to necessarily be able to fight the diseases as easily as you can. So it's very multifaceted. That's one of many ways that having a fully functioning nervous system is going to help your immune system. And then in terms of longevity, we all know that, what is it? There are more centenarians, more people over 100 years old right now in society than there ever been in history, right? And when those people were born 100 years ago, life expectancy was basically 50, right? My good friend and mentor, Dr. Eric Plasker, wrote a great book called The 100-Year Lifestyle. And he talks all about this and longevity. He's somebody you should probably have you on podcast at some point. But he talks about, what is it that all centenarians, that all people over 100 have in common? What's the one thing they all have in common, Jess?
Lifestyle.
I'll tell you. Do you want to guess at it?
I just guess. I don't know if it's lifestyle, but
Nope.
Nope.
They didn't die. They didn't die. It's the one thing they have in common. But the question is, how are they living? Right? Like some of them, if you ask somebody if they want to live to 100, a lot of people are like, no way, because they visualize somebody in a nursing home, somebody like decrepit and old, but there are 100-year-old people that are still working out at gyms. They're still very active. So it's all about living by choice, not by chance. And so keep your immune system strong, because that'll keep you alive longer, but also you want to live this lifestyle that you said before so that you live better. So the lifestyle is not just about living longer. It's not about adding years to your life, but about adding life to your years.
So quality.
Quality.
Okay. That's great. So, all right. So the fifth key is you talk about mental wellness, and I love all of the I would say like modalities or tips that you've woven into this section of your book, from being inner directed to starting your day with intention to using goal setting and visualization and being grateful and working on forgiveness and choosing happiness and having healthy relationships, and especially important for kids, avoiding gossip and drama. That's such a great foundational remembering, focusing on, having a growth mindset where you're always constantly learning, being loving and kind, and, incorporating prayer into your daily routine. And the one thing that I'm really curious about is, could you talk a little bit about how thoughts become things, and what's your perspective on how parents can help children really establish a solid foundation for mental health and having, putting good thoughts into your head every day.
Yeah. And it's a really, really important aspect of healthy living, and living consciously. So affirmations are a really, really good start. And the affirmations have to start with the parents, because a child's not going to understand the affirmations. But basically, always affirming to your child about how wonderful they are, how smart they are, how strong they are, how this they are, how all the positive things. And every time you say a negative affirmation to your child, you're always this, you're shy, you're bad, you're this, you're that. You are now affirming those negatives. And that's where the negativity starts with, is from the parents and the rest of the world having all this negative stuff. They're going to come up with their own negative thoughts enough on their own. They don't need parents seeding it into them. And so we have to be very aware of what we're saying. You could say to your child, you are a great kid. You did a bad thing, but you're a great kid. We're going to handle this. And you handle the misbehavior, whatever you did, but you can't say you're bad or you're this. Or when you say you're shy, this is my shy kid. You are affirming that. An affirmation is anything that you say, right? Whether it's a positive or negative affirmation. And when you start saying the right things to your children and you teach them how to create their own affirmations, it is going to put them on a different trajectory of self-awareness and positivity, and therefore, set them up for success. I know you had a lot more in your question there, but go back and ask again where you wanted me to go with that.
Well, I think you covered a lot of ground there. This might be my favorite chapter in the book, because it's all, it's helping the children think through how to set up their day and giving them tools to navigate through tough challenges. And that's all we're going to have in life, or just constant challenges. It's not going to be easy. So maybe you could talk just a little bit about your ideas around discipline and turning deprivation into empowerment. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah. So when I talk about discipline here, and I'm not talking about disciplining children, I'm talking about the definition of discipline. So for all of you parents out there listening, I'm not talking about parenting when it comes to behavioral parenting. I'm talking about what is discipline. Discipline is when you take something that would be deprivation for one person and becomes empowerment for another. And so, people would, they say, well, I can't possibly eat like that, or go to the gym now and do all those things. You're so disciplined. Like it's a negative thing. Like you must hate life, right? You're not eating that cheesecake after dinner. You must hate life. Well, no, people who are truly disciplined are empowered by their choices. They're not depriving themselves. They don't feel like they have lack. Does it mean they're giving up maybe something that would be enjoyable temporarily? Sure. But the result of it outweighs it. So the empowerment that they get from it later on is much more great, much more powerful. Tony Robbins talks about, he says people are motivated by one of two things: to move away from pain or to move towards pleasure, right? And most people are motivated by moving away from pain. That's why a lot of doctors and chiropractors alike talk about back pain, neck pain, all that stuff, car accidents. I've never in 23 years advertised back pain or neck pain. Just never did it. I never wanted to relate to the people who wanted to move away from pain. I wanted to work with people who wanted to move towards pleasure. But there's a third element that Tony Robbins never talked about, and that is people who are moving and living on purpose. And when you're living on purpose, what is your purpose in life? And I talk about this in the mental wellness aspect of it, right? Understanding your purpose in life. When you're on purpose, sometimes there's pain, sometimes there's pleasure, but the greatness that you get from being on purpose goes beyond the pain and the pleasure, which is very temporal, because purpose is for life. And that's what it's really about, is living a purposeful life.
Do you think that children can discover their purpose in childhood, or do you think it's something that you discover as your life unfolds?
I think that there are people 80 years old that don't know what that purpose is. So I think that anyone could start understanding the purpose and why they're put here on the planet at any given age when they could actually comprehend what that means. And it doesn't mean it can't change either. Right. You know, for some purpose, like my purpose in life is to serve God by assisting all people realize their perfection. One of my mentors, his purpose in life is to be happy, right? There's no right or wrong purpose, right? Some it's to be the best parent that they can be. You know, everybody is different. So for a child, you know, maybe the purpose at that moment is my purpose is to help my friends realize how great they are. You know, who knows? Or maybe my purpose is to win this game. It could be very short terms and stuff. So, but we do have exercises in the book that help adults and children alike help discover their purpose based on, you know, what are some of the things that they're most passionate about in life, and basically going through a process of determining what their purpose is. A 3-year-old finding their purpose, not so much. A 10-year-old, you got a decent shot at least getting close to it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right, we've talked about so much today. I'm curious for people that are interested in making some pivotal lifestyle changes in order to support, you know, raising healthy kids, both physically and mentally healthy. How can they make these changes kind of easily and quickly? Is there a way to kind of hack your way through this? Do you have any advice or guidance on, like, where do we get started?
Yes. And this here is probably the most important question that you're asking me, because, you know, for people that look at the book, they're going to be like, this is 450 pages. I don't have time to read 450 pages. Well, the good thing is I've set up the book in a way that you can actually get through the book and make major modifications in your life in under 30 minutes, right? So as you know, in the book, there's a lifestyle assessment tool called the D.R.E.A.M score. It is free. This is not a pitch for anyone to buy anything. This is absolutely 100% free. What it costs you is about 18 to 22 minutes of your time to answer around 85 questions about your lifestyle. The D.R.E.A.M score will serve as an indicator of your current health status and a predictor of your children's current and future. And basically, it's going to help understand why you are where you are in your current health. It's not going to ask about your heart rate, your blood pressure, your BMI, or anything like that. It wants to know why. Why is your blood pressure what it is? Why are you able to sleep or not sleep the amount of hours? Why are your relationships possibly strained? Why are you not successful at this in life, or why are you successful? It's all about the why. And so when you get the report, again, which is free, there's no upsell, there's no gimmicks. When you get the report will tell you exactly what page to what paragraph in the book you should read to get your score to increase. And so I would love for everyone to read the book cover to cover like you did, Jess. Most people don't. Okay. I don't even know if my family's made it through the book, to be honest with you. But the D.R.E.A.M score gets you through the most important parts. So this way, if you see that there are 3, 4, 5, 10 areas that you need to work on the most, that's your hack. You take the D.R.E.A.M score, you work on those top areas. You have your spouse do the same if you're married. If you have a teenage child, they could take the D.R.E.A.M score as well, or a younger child, you could take it with them, and just basically find out what changes do you need to make now and make them. Because when you have the D.R.E.A.M score, the paragraph will tell you exactly where to go, and the book in that will tell you exactly what to do.
Okay. Let's we're going to include the link in our show notes, but I want to pop it up here. So will you tell people exactly where they can go right now to access the D.R.E.A.M score?
Yeah, there are several places that can be found. Probably the best place to send them to is dreamwellnessbook.com. And in the D.R.E.A.M Wellness book, they could get the book. They can take the D.R.E.A.M score. If they already have the book and they want access to over 60 different bonuses, many of which we had talked about before, they get all those for free. So dreamwellnessbook.com is where they could get everything.
Okay, great. And then where can people find you on social media?
Social media, Instagram at Dr. Brian Stenzler and Dr. Brian Stenzler. I have a Dr. Brian Stenzler Facebook thing I rarely do anything with. Mostly it's just my personal Facebook. I'll post a picture of my kid or something like that. I've got a YouTube channel, Wellness Wikis. So that's a great place to watch some videos and see what's going on. And that goes into my blog page of Wellness Wikis. So the two communicate with each other, because I basically video record most of my blogs.
Okay.
So Wellness Wikis is an easy thing on YouTube.
Okay, great. We'll post all those. Any other ways that people could get in touch with you if they want to follow your work and learn more about what you're doing to help empower parents raising physically and mentally healthy children?
Yeah, absolutely. I have another website, drbrianstenzler.com. Again, it's DR, Brian with an I, Stenzler.com. And that's got all information about where I am, my speaking engagements, consulting, media, all of that. And of course, if they need to get in touch with me, there's a contact form. They can fill that out. That goes right to my email. And right now, I actually go through all my emails. When I was having my assistant doing it, they don't know what's important to me. Like sometimes, like the smallest email there'll be something that they say and it just hits me and I respond to it myself. So that's a great place, is drbrianstenzler.com.
Okay, great. Brian, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fun and I've learned a tremendous amount as well. So thank you so much. We really appreciate the work that you're doing in the world. Do you have any final just words of wisdom for our audience? Thinking about just the challenges that parents have gone through over the last 2 years, and now, things are starting to lift a bit, but any parting words of wisdom for parents to support them in the process of raising healthy children?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I would want parents to take with them is just be the leader you want your kids to follow. Set the example. They're going to follow you, whether you do the good things or the bad things. So you might as well do it right and set a good example.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Brian.